The midday sun fell like molten iron over the Arizona desert. In the middle of nowhere, next to a dry cactus, lay an Apache woman, her legs useless, her face marked by pain. Her name was San, and her own people had left her to die. 3 days earlier, the tribe had broken camp. The shaman had declared that the spirits no longer protected San since the battle against the blue soldiers when a bullet had shattered her spine. She had become a burden. In the desert, the weak do not survive. That was the law. San did not cry when she saw the last silhouettes of her people disappear. She had learned that tears do not change fate. They had left her a half-full water skin and a knife. She knew what that knife meant. It was an option, the only honorable way out, but San was not ready to use it, not yet. The vultures were already beginning to draw circles in the sky. She watched them with a mixture of contempt and resignation. Not yet, black brothers, she murmured in Apache. I still breathe. On the second day, the thirst became unbearable. San rationed every drop of water as if it were liquid gold. Her lips cracked, her tongue swelled. Hallucinations began to visit her. She saw her mother braiding her hair, her little brother chasing rabbits, the young warrior she once was. In her visions, she ran free through the mountains, her bow drawn, her legs strong as a deer's. Then she would wake up and reality would hit her. She was paralyzed, abandoned, dying. The irony was cruel. San had been one of the best trackers in her tribe. She could follow a rabbit's trail across stones, red clouds like others' red footprints. Now she could not even stand. The third day arrived with an ominous silence. Not even the wind dared to blow. The waterskin was empty. San took the knife with trembling hands, watched it gleam under the merciless sun. It would be quick. She had seen many warriors die. She knew exactly where to cut. She closed her eyes, began to sing the death song her grandmother had taught her. The words came out rough from her dry throat, but beautiful in their melancholy. It was a song for the brave, for those who chose their own end. Then in the distance she heard something. At first she thought it was another hallucination, but the sound grew clearer. Horse hooves, many hooves. She opened her eyes. A dust cloud was rising on the horizon, approaching rapidly. 6 riders emerged from the wavering heat of the desert. Cowboys, white men. San gripped the knife. She would rather die by her own hand than suffer what those men could do to her. The stories of what cowboys did to Apache women ran like rivers of blood in her people's memory. The horses stopped, forming a semicircle around her. The men looked down at her from their saddles, some with curiosity, others with contempt, one with pity. San returned their gaze with defiant pride. Despite being covered in dust and near death, she was Apache. She would not give them the pleasure of seeing her beg. "What do we have here?" said one, spitting tobacco on the ground. "A crippled Indian. Better leave her, boys. She can't even walk," added another, laughing. "Why waste time?" The man who had remained silent finally spoke. His voice was deep, calm, different. "She's hurt, alone. Flint, there are thousands of wounded Indians out there. Are you going to pick them all up?" mocked the first. Flint dismounted slowly. He was tall, with a face weathered by years under the sun and eyes the color of the sky just before a storm. He walked toward San with measured steps. She raised the knife, ready to stab him if he came too close. "Easy," he said, stopping at a safe distance. Then looking at his companions, he spoke the words that would change everything. "She's mine now, the Apache nobody wanted." Episode 2. The Lone Cowboy. The silence that followed Flint's words was heavier than the desert heat. The 5 cowboys looked at him as if he had lost his mind. One of them, a stocky man with a scar on his cheek named Dutch, let out a dry laugh. "Yours, Flint. The sun fried your brain. That Indian isn't even fit to clean stables." "I didn't ask for your opinion, Dutch," Flint replied without taking his eyes off San. She still held the knife, her black eyes burning with a mix of confusion and distrust. This white man was different. There was no lust in his gaze, no cruelty, just something she could not decipher. "Flint, be reasonable," intervened another, younger cowboy. "We have to find those lost cattle for the Henderson ranch. We can't carry a cripple." "Then go," said Flint, approaching San slowly. "I'm staying with her." The men exchanged glances. They had known Flint for years. He was the best tracker among them, the fastest with a revolver, and the most stubborn when he made a decision. Dutch spat on the ground in disgust. "Fine, crazy man, your funeral, but when Boss McGraw finds out about this, don't count on me to defend you." He spurred his horse, and the others followed, leaving a cloud of dust behind them. Flint knelt in front of San, keeping his hands visible. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said in slow, clear English. She did not respond, but her knuckles turned white around the knife handle. He sighed. "Look, you can stay here and die, or you can come with me. You choose." He pointed to his horse, a sturdy sorrel grazing quietly a few meters away. "I have water, food, a place to sleep." San assessed her options. The sun was already beginning its descent, but the heat was still deadly. Her waterskin was empty, her strength fading. This man could kill her, yes, but death was certain if she stayed. At least with him there was a chance, however small. She lowered the knife slightly. Flint took it as a sign. With careful movements, he took a canteen from his saddle and uncapped it. The sound of water splashing was like heavenly music to San's ears. He offered it to her. She hesitated only a second before snatching it away. She drank desperately, the cool water running down her parched throat like a divine blessing. Flint waited patiently until she finished. "Can you move at all?" he asked. She shook her head. From the waist down, her body was dead stone. Flint nodded, assessing the situation. I'm going to carry you. If you try to stab me, we both fall, and neither of us comes out well. Understand?" She stared at him for a long time, then, to both their surprise, she nodded. She let the knife fall to the ground. It was an act of trust that cost San every ounce of her pride. Flint lifted her carefully. She was lighter than he expected, consumed by days without eating. He settled her on his horse and mounted behind her. San tensed, feeling the cowboy's arms around her to take the reins, but he kept a respectful distance. "My ranch is 2 hours west," he said, gently urging the horse forward. "Hold on until we get there." The ride was silent. San watched the landscape pass by, the rock formations she had known since childhood, the cacti that marked territories invisible to white eyes. She wondered what this man really wanted. No one did something like this without expecting something in return. Perhaps he was worse than she thought. Perhaps he wanted her alive to torture her slowly. But as they rode, she began to notice things. The way Flint guided the horse gently, avoiding rougher ground so as not to jostle her. How he stopped every half hour to offer her water. The way he whistled softly, a sad melody lost in the wind. Finally, a modest structure appeared on the horizon, a wooden house with an attached stable, a horse corral, a well. It wasn't much, but in the middle of the unforgiving desert, it looked like an oasis. "Home, sweet home," Flint murmured ironically. He dismounted and lifted her carefully, carrying her inside. The house was sparse, a bed, a table, a cast iron stove, shelves with provisions, but it was clean and orderly. He placed her on the bed. San looked around, her senses alert. She searched for weapons, exits, anything she could use if things turned bad. "You must be hungry," said Flint, heading to the cupboard. He took out bread, jerky, and some preserved fruit. He prepared a simple plate and offered it to her. San ate slowly, never taking her eyes off him. He sat in a chair on the other side of the room, giving her space. He lit a cigar and stared out the window at the darkening desert. "I guess you're wondering why I did this," he finally said without looking at her. "Truth is, I don't really know myself. Maybe because I know what it's like to be alone, what it's like to have nobody want you around." He turned to her. In his eyes was an ancient sadness, scars not visible on his skin. "My name is Flint Dawson. 3 years ago, my wife and daughter died of fever. I've lived alone here ever since. The townsfolk tolerate me because I can handle cattle and shoot, but I have no friends, no family, just this piece of land and my horses." He paused, taking a deep drag from his cigar. "I saw in your eyes what I feel every morning when I wake up. That look that says you don't care whether you live or die, but you keep breathing anyway because giving up is worse than suffering." San listened in silence. She did not understand all the words, but she understood the tone, the pain, the loneliness. Those were universal languages. "I don't know what will happen tomorrow," Flint continued. "Probably the whole town will come to give me trouble, but tonight at least you won't be alone in the desert, and I won't be alone in this empty house." He stood and brought her a blanket. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day for both of us." As San settled in, she watched Flint prepare his own place to sleep on the floor, giving her the bed. It was a small gesture, but significant. She closed her eyes, still distrustful, but for the first time in days, she felt something like hope. Outside, the coyotes began their nightly song, and the stars shone indifferently over the infinite desert. The Apache Nobody Wanted, Episode 3. The town talks. Morning came too soon. Flint was already awake when the first rays of sun streamed through the windows. He made coffee on the stove, the aroma filling the small cabin. San woke with a start, her survival instinct still alert, but she relaxed slightly upon seeing Flint simply preparing breakfast. "Good morning," he said, offering her a cup of coffee. She took it cautiously, tasting the dark liquid. It was bitter but warm and comforting. Flint made her eggs and bacon, more food than she had seen in weeks. As they ate in silence, he noticed something. San watched everything attentively, how he handled utensils, where he stored things, the layout of the house. It was not passive curiosity. It was tactical reconnaissance. She was learning the terrain, as any good warrior would. "I need to go to town today," Flint said finally, "to buy supplies. I can leave you here with water and food." He paused. "Or you can come with me. It won't be pleasant. People will talk." San stared at him. Then, to Flint's surprise, she pointed toward the door with determination. She wanted to go. She would not stay hidden like a coward. Flint nodded with respect. "All right, but I'm warning you. The town of Red Springs isn't friendly to outsiders, especially not to Apache." An hour later, they rode toward town. Flint had improvised a way to secure San in the saddle, tying her with soft ropes so she would not fall. She hated depending on those bindings, but understood the necessity. Red Springs appeared on the horizon, a collection of dusty buildings along a main street. Saloon, general store, blacksmith, bank, sheriff's office, and of course the post office, the heart where all the town's gossip pulsed. The moment they entered town, heads began to turn, conversation stopped. The men on the saloon porch stopped playing cards. The women coming out of the general store froze, mouths agape. "My God," one whispered. "Flint Dawson is bringing an Indian. He's crazy. What is he doing with that savage? Did you see? She can't walk. She's crippled." The murmurs spread like fire through dry grass. Flint kept his head high, ignoring the stares. He stopped his horse in front of the general store and dismounted. Carefully, he lifted San and carried her in his arms. The storekeeper, a portly man named Wilson, came out with wide eyes. "Flint, what the hell?" "Good morning, Wilson. I need supplies," Flint said calmly, entering the store. Wilson followed him, stammering, "Flint, you can't, I mean, she's an Apache, for God's sake, and she's paralyzed." "I need flour, beans, coffee, sugar, canned meat," Flint continued, ignoring the objections. "Also bandages, alcohol for disinfecting, and soap, lots of soap." Flint set San carefully on a chair by the counter. She stared at Wilson with those dark, impenetrable eyes. The storekeeper instinctively backed away. "I'm not serving you with that thing here," Wilson burst out. Flint's hand moved faster than a snake, grabbing the storekeeper by the collar of his shirt and pulling him close. His voice was low, dangerous. "She is not a thing. She has a name. It's San, and you will treat her with respect, or I will find another store to spend my money. Understand?" Wilson swallowed, nodding frantically. Flint released him, and the man began gathering the supplies with trembling hands. The news spread quickly. By the time Flint had finished shopping, a small crowd had gathered outside the store. Among them was Sheriff Tucker, an older man with a graying mustache and a gleaming badge. "Flint, I need to talk to you," Tucker said with a tired voice. "Then talk," Flint replied, loading the supplies onto his horse. "No, here in my office, alone." Flint looked at San. She nodded almost imperceptibly. She could manage a few minutes. Flint settled her on the store's porch, where at least there was shade, and followed the sheriff. In the office, Tucker closed the door and sighed deeply. "Flint, I've known you for years. You're a good man, but this is madness. What's so crazy about giving shelter to someone who needs it? She's Apache. Her people have killed settlers, attacked wagon trains, and you bring her here to the heart of town. She can't even walk, Tucker. What harm can she do? It's not just that." The sheriff ran a hand over his face. "People are scared, angry, you know how they are, and Flint McGraw is already looking for excuses to kick you off your land. This gives him the perfect ammunition." Clint McGraw was the richest man in the county, owner of the largest ranch, and powerful enough to buy laws and consciences. For months, he had wanted Flint's land because it had the best access to the river. Flint had refused to sell. "McGraw can go to hell," Flint said firmly. "Flint, listen to me. Take her back to her people or leave her on Apache territory, but don't bring her here. This will only bring trouble. She stays." Tucker shook his head, defeated. "You're more stubborn than a mule. Just be careful and keep your gun close." When Flint stepped outside, he found a scene that chilled his blood. A group of men had surrounded San on the porch. Among them was Dutch, his former co-worker, and other cowboys from the McGraw ranch. "Look at that," Dutch said mockingly. "A little Apache. What do you want her for, Flint? A pet?" The men laughed crudely. San stared at them without fear, but Flint saw her hands clenched into helpless fists on her lap. "Get away from her," Flint ordered, his hand moving instinctively toward his revolver. "Oh, calm down, hero," said another cowboy. "We're just curious. What can this thing do?" "She can't even stand." One of them, emboldened by morning whiskey, reached a hand toward San's hair. It was a mistake. Before he could touch her, San moved with surprising speed. She took the knife from the man's belt and pressed it against his wrist in one fluid motion. The cowboy screamed, frozen. Though her legs did not work, her arms were strong as steel cables, and she knew exactly where to cut to make a man bleed out in minutes. "She's crazy. Help," the cowboy yelled. Flint arrived in 2 strides but did not disarm San. Instead, he stood beside her, his revolver now drawn and aimed at the rest of the group. "The next one who touches her deals with both of us," he said in an icy voice. The silence was absolute. Even Dutch stepped back. He knew that look in Flint's eyes. It was the look of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Let's go, boys," Dutch finally said. "Not worth it. Let Flint play with his crippled pet. We'll see how this ends." The men dispersed, muttering veiled threats. Flint waited until the last was gone before holstering his gun. He looked at San, who still held the knife. Carefully, she let it drop. "Good move," Flint said with a slight smile. For the first time, San returned something like a smile. It was small, barely visible, but it was there. As they rode back to the ranch, Flint knew he had crossed a point of no return. Red Springs would never accept them. McGraw would use this against him. The trouble was just beginning, but seeing San sitting in front of him with her head held high, despite everything, he felt he had made the right decision. Some battles were worth fighting, no matter the consequences. The desert welcomed them back with its eternal silence, a mute witness to an unlikely alliance about to be tested by fire. The weeks that followed were strange and tense. Flint and San developed a quiet routine. He went out every morning to work with the cattle and horses while she stayed in the house. At first, San simply watched from the window, feeling useless. But little by little, she began to find ways to contribute. Her arms were strong. She could crawl around the house using only the strength of her upper body. She started cleaning, cooking, mending Flint's torn clothes. He never asked her to do anything, but she needed to feel useful. In Apache culture, everyone contributed. She would not accept being a burden. One afternoon, Flint came home and found dinner prepared. It wasn't much, just a simple stew, but it was well seasoned with herbs she had identified near the well. He sat down, tasted the food, and nodded with approval. "It's good," he said. San felt something warm in her chest. Pride, perhaps. It had been a long time since she felt pride in anything. Flint began teaching her English in the evenings, pointing to objects and saying their names. San was a fast learner, hungry to understand this new world. In turn, she taught him words in Apache. "Shitty, my friend, Shikwe's my brother," but the peace was fragile like crystal on stone. One afternoon, Flint was in the corral training a young horse when he saw a dust cloud approaching, 6 riders. He recognized the leader immediately. Clint McGraw, mounted on a stallion black as night. McGraw was an imposing man, tall and broad, with a perfectly trimmed mustache and eyes cold as steel. He wore expensive clothes but carried 2 revolvers on his belt. He was not just a wealthy rancher, he was dangerous. "Dawson," McGraw called out, reining in a few meters away. His men fanned out behind him, forming a threatening line. Among them was Dutch, smiling maliciously. "McGraw," Flint replied, staying calm. "What brings you here?" "Business, Dawson, always business." McGraw dismounted with elegant movements. "I've come to make you an offer, a final offer for your land." "I already told you it's not for sale." "Ah, but circumstances have changed, haven't they?" McGraw smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I hear you have company now, a crippled Apache. How charitable of you." Flint felt the rage bubbling inside him but kept it controlled. "What I do on my land is my business." "Normally I'd agree," McGraw said, walking slowly around the corral like a predator sizing up his prey. "But you see, this has become a public safety issue. The settlers are nervous. Some say you're planning something with that Indian, maybe bring more Apache here, maybe start trouble. That's ridiculous, and you know it." "I know," McGraw said, looking directly at Flint, "but people are afraid, Dawson, and when people are afraid, they do stupid things, like burning ranches in the middle of the night. It would be a tragedy if something like that happened here, especially with a helpless woman inside." It was a thinly veiled threat. Flint stepped forward, his hand near his revolver. "If you or any of your men come near her, I swear—" "You'll shoot me," McGraw interrupted, his smile disappearing. "I'm the most powerful man in the county, Dawson. I have the sheriff in my pocket. Half the town owes me money. I can gather 20 armed men with a snap of my fingers. You're a lonely cowboy with a crippled Indian. You don't stand a chance." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with contained violence. McGraw's men had their hands near their weapons, waiting for their boss's signal. From the house, San watched everything through the window. She did not understand all the words, but she understood the body language. This rich man was the enemy, and Flint was in danger because of her. "I'll give you 3 days," McGraw said finally. 3 days to make the right choice. Sell the land and leave with your Apache pet or face the consequences. He turned toward his horse. "Oh, and Dawson, that offer I made you before, $3,000 for your land. It's now $2,000. The price drops every day you keep me waiting." McGraw and his men rode off, leaving another cloud of dust. Flint stood motionless, his fists clenched, trembling with suppressed rage. That night Flint did not sleep. He sat by the window with his rifle, watching. San watched him from the bed, seeing the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes never stopped scanning the darkness. "Flint," she said in her broken English. It was one of the first times she spoke his name. He turned to look at her. "I go you no problem." She understood what she was saying. She would leave, let him have his life back without complications. Flint shook his head firmly. "No, you stay." He searched for the Apache words she had taught him. "Shitty, my friend." Something broke inside San's chest, something that had been hardened since the day her tribe abandoned her. This white man, this stranger, was willing to lose everything for her. Not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because he had decided that she mattered. The next 2 days passed in growing tension. Flint reinforced the doors and windows, taught San to load and fire a rifle. Though she could not walk, she could defend herself if necessary. She learned quickly. Her natural Apache hunter's aim came back to life. The 3rd day arrived with an ominous silence. Flint knew McGraw's threats were not empty. He spent the day preparing, moving ammunition, checking weapons, ensuring every window had a clear line of fire. At sunset, San was preparing dinner when she heard Flint curse from outside. She crawled to the window and her heart sank. On the horizon, a line of riders was approaching. Not 6 this time, at least 15, maybe more. McGraw had brought a small army. Flint came in quickly, barring the door. His face was pale but determined. "This is going to get ugly," he said, handing San a rifle. "Stay away from the windows until absolutely necessary, and if things get really bad." He left a revolver beside her. "You know what to do," she nodded, understanding. It was the same kind of choice her tribe had given her with the knife in the desert, but this time she did not intend to use it on herself. This time she would fight. The riders surrounded the house, forming a complete circle. McGraw was at the front now, holding a torch. The firelight danced on his face, making him look demonic. "Dawson," he shouted. "Last chance. Come out with your hands up in the deed to your land. You can take the Indian and leave alive." Flint opened a window slightly, keeping his rifle ready. "The answer is no, McGraw. This is my land and I'm staying." "Then die on it," McGraw replied icily. "Boys, set this place on fire, and if anyone comes out, shoot." 2 of McGraw's men dismounted with torches, approaching the stable. Flint had no choice. He aimed carefully and fired. The first man fell, screaming and clutching his leg. The second dropped his torch and ran back to his horse. "They're shooting." "Return fire," McGraw yelled. Hell broke loose. McGraw's men began firing at the house. Bullets tore through the wooden walls, splintering everything in their path. Flint moved from window to window, returning fire with deadly precision. Every shot counted. He could not waste ammunition. San, from her position on the floor, crawled to the east side window. She saw 3 men trying to approach from that blind angle. She rested the rifle on the sill, took a deep breath as Flint had taught her, and pulled the trigger. The recoil shook her, but her shot was true. One man fell, the other two scattered in surprise. They had not expected resistance from that side. The Indian's shooting, one yelled. She's just a cripple, another replied, but his voice trembled. San reloaded and fired again and again. Her arms were strong from years of drawing a bow. The rifle was just another weapon, and she was Apache. She was born for war. Flint heard her firing and felt a surge of pride. She was not a victim. She was a warrior. Together they were holding off 15 men, but he knew they could not last forever. Ammunition would run out, and McGraw only needed one of his men to get close enough with a torch. Then in the middle of the chaos he heard something unexpected. Gunfire, but not aimed at them, coming from another direction. Flint risked a look out the window, and his heart leaped. Sheriff Tucker had arrived with a dozen men from town. Not all were friends of Flint, but they were honest men, tired of McGraw acting as if he were above the law. "Cease fire," Tucker shouted. "McGraw, this ends now. You're surrounded." McGraw looked around, assessing the situation. He had lost the element of surprise and was now outnumbered, his face contorted with rage, but he was smart enough to know when to retreat. "This isn't over, Dawson," he yelled as he spurred his horse. "It's not over." And followed, leaving behind the wounded and the dead. The silence that followed was deafening after the roar of gunfire. Flint slowly came out of the house, still holding his rifle. Tucker dismounted and walked toward him. "You came just in time," Flint said. Tucker nodded wearily. "Not everyone in Red Springs agrees with McGraw's methods. When we heard he was coming here with his gang, some of us decided enough was enough." He looked toward the house, where San watched from the window. "That woman can shoot. I saw 2 of McGraw's men fall from that side. She knows how to defend herself," Flint said simply. "Yeah, well," Tucker scratched his chin. "McGraw will be back, Flint. You know how he is, and next time he'll be more careful." "I know, but now there are witnesses that he attacked your property without provocation. That gives me something to work with, not much, but something." Tucker turned to his men. "Come on, boys, let these folks rest." Before leaving, Tucker stopped and looked at Flint. "For what it's worth, my wife sent you this." He handed him a package wrapped in cloth, bandages, and medicine. "She said if you're going to be stubborn and stay with the Apache woman, you should at least have something to treat your wounds." Flint took the package, surprised. "Thank her for me." When everyone was gone, Flint returned to the house. San was where he had left her, the rifle still in her hands. She trembled slightly, the adrenaline beginning to fade. Flint knelt beside her. "You did good," he said softly. "Real good." San let the rifle drop, and to Flint's surprise, she leaned forward, resting her forehead against his shoulder. She was not crying, but her body shook. She had killed men to protect this place, this strange home she had found. Flint held her carefully, letting her process what had happened. Outside, the desert night was cold and silent, as if nothing had occurred. But they both knew the war was just beginning, and this time they were not alone. Days after the attack were strange. Red Springs split into 2 clearly defined camps. On one side were McGraw's loyalists, men who depended on his money and power. On the other, those who had seen enough abuse and decided there was a line that should not be crossed. Sheriff Tucker's wife, a small woman with a firm character named Martha, began a quiet campaign. She visited houses, spoke with other women in town. "That man defended his home," she would say, "and that Apache woman fought alongside him. Isn't that what we all do, protect what we love?" Not everyone was convinced, but seeds of doubt about McGraw began to germinate. Meanwhile, at the ranch, life continued. Flint repaired the bullet holes in the walls. San learned more English every day, and he learned more Apache. Their conversations became deeper, more personal. One night, as they shared coffee after dinner, San asked him, "Why you saved me?" Flint was silent for a long time, staring at the fire in the stove. Finally, he spoke. Voice was barely a whisper. "When my wife and daughter died, I turned inward. I kept living because I didn't know how to stop. I worked, ate, slept, but I felt nothing." He looked up at her. "When I saw you in the desert, I saw my own reflection, someone abandoned waiting to die, and I thought if I couldn't save myself, maybe I could save you." San nodded slowly, understanding more than the words said. "You save yourself too when you save me." Flint smiled sadly. "Yeah, I guess I did." "Flint," she said, using his name with more confidence. "Now I know burden, I warrior. Always a warrior," he replied. "I saw it that day, I see it every day." The following week brought troubling news. Dutch appeared in town drinking whiskey and bragging that McGraw had a plan. "That Dawson and his Apache are going to wish they'd taken the offer," he said between laughs. "The boss has something special planned." Sheriff Tucker came to warn them immediately. "I don't know what McGraw is plotting, but he's gathering men, tough men from other territories, hired guns." Flint felt a knot in his stomach. "How many?" "I don't know for sure, but more than we can handle, I guarantee it." That night Flint and San prepared. He checked every weapon, cleaned every bullet. She practiced reloading rifles until her hands could do it in the dark. They knew they were at a disadvantage. McGraw had unlimited resources. They only had determination. But San had something else. Knowledge. "Flint," she said 2 nights later, her eyes gleaming with an idea. "I know way, Apache way." Using gestures, broken English, and drawings in the dirt, San explained a tactic Apache warriors had used for generations. They could not win with brute force, but they could use the terrain, traps, the element of surprise. Flint listened, fascinated, as she laid out a plan. It was brilliant, leveraging every advantage they had, their knowledge of the ranch, advanced preparation, and the fact that McGraw's men would underestimate them. You're a genius, Flint said with genuine admiration. San smiled, a full smile this time, showing white teeth. Apache always win when think, not just fight. They spent the following days preparing. They dug shallow trenches, covered them with branches, created blind spots, set simple traps with rope and cans that would make noise. San even taught him to make smoke signals that would confuse anyone who saw them. The attack came in the early morning of the seventh day. This time McGraw did not come personally. He sent his hired guns, 20 men armed to the teeth, led by a cold, calculating man named Wraithagen. Burn everything had been McGraw's order, and if bodies are found in the ashes, even better. But when the men reached the ranch, they found something strange. The house was dark, silent, no signs of life. The stable was empty. They ran, said one of the gunslingers. Cowards. Wraithagen was not so sure. He was a professional. He had survived years in this business because he trusted his instincts, and his instincts told him something was wrong. Be careful, he ordered. Spread out, check everything. That was when they triggered the first trap. A man stepped on a hidden rope, and a shower of cans fell from the stable roof, making an infernal racket. Everyone spun toward the noise, nervous. That was the moment Flint chose. From his hidden position behind rocks 50 meters away, he opened fire. His first shot dropped the man closest to the house. The second wounded another in the shoulder. We're being ambushed, someone yelled. The gunslingers scattered, seeking cover, firing toward where Flint's muzzle flash had come from, but he had already moved, using the shallow trenches they had dug to reach another position. From the opposite side, San opened fire. McGraw's men were now caught in a crossfire, not knowing how many enemies they faced or where the next shot would come from. It's just the cowboy and the cripple, one yelled. Just two, but just two who knew every rock, every bush, every shadow of the terrain, just two fighting for their home, not for money. Wraithagen tried to organize his men, but the chaos was total. Every time he gathered some to advance, fire came from an unexpected angle. San's simple traps kept everyone jumpy, flinching at every sound. Then came the boldest part of the plan. San lit 3 small fires in different positions around the ranch, making them look like signals. The gunslingers, already nervous, believed reinforcements were arriving. There are more of them, we've been set up, one shouted, and panic spread like gunpowder. 3 men were already dead, 5 wounded. The rest began retreating toward their horses. Wraithagen tried to stop them, but when a bullet from Flint grazed his ear, he too decided the pay was not worth his life. Pull back, he ordered, and the gunslingers fled in disarray, leaving their fallen comrades behind. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Flint slowly emerged from his hiding spot, rifle ready, but there was no one left to shoot. They were gone, all of them. He hurried to where San was. She was still in position, trembling slightly from adrenaline, but unharmed. Her eyes gleamed with something wild and triumphant. They had won, against all odds, they had won. We did it, Flint said, almost not believing it. We actually did it. San let out a laugh, a real laugh, full of relief and joy. Flint found himself laughing too, the tension of days fading in a moment of shared victory. But they knew it was not over. McGraw was still out there. The next day, the whole town heard what had happened. The surviving gunslingers fled the territory, telling exaggerated stories of an Apache ambush with dozens of warriors. No one knew it had been just 2 people. McGraw was furious but also worried. He had lost money, men, and worst of all, reputation. People were beginning to question his power. If a lonely cowboy and a crippled Apache woman could defeat him, how powerful was he really? Sheriff Tucker seized the moment. With the support of the town's most respectable citizens, he filed formal charges against McGraw for the unprovoked attack. It was not enough to jail him. McGraw had too many lawyers for that, but it was enough to humiliate him publicly. A week later, McGraw appeared at Flint's ranch. This time he came alone without visible weapons. Flint met him with his rifle, but McGraw raised a hand. I came to talk, not to fight. Talk fast, Flint replied. McGraw looked around the ranch, at the bullet marks on the walls, at San watching from the window. For the first time, something like respect appeared in his eyes. I underestimated you, he finally said. Both of you. I thought you were just a sentimental cowboy and her just a useless cripple. I was wrong. I've decided your land isn't worth more trouble. There are other places, other opportunities. He turned to leave.